Welcome everyone to another edition of Think Dffrnt, powered by Dffrnt, unsurprisingly. What are these events about? Well, these events are basically a chance to hear founder stories of creators that are building something interesting, and in an honest capacity. You know what it's like, you go to a startup event and often you hear the rose-tinted glasses story and you wonder, how the hell can I get to the point that they're at? So we're hopefully going to dig a little bit deeper today with Ellie, who I'll introduce properly in a second. But before I get to that, I just want to kind of tell you a little bit more about what the event is about. So Dffrnt is a company that I run. We provide business benefits for creators to help make your business journey easier, basically. It's one of the hardest jobs in the world, and I'm sure lots of you don't need me to tell you that. You're probably here because you're building something yourself, or thinking about it, or at least know someone who is. And yeah, you'll know or have seen on their behalf that building a business is hard, but Dffrnt is here to essentially make it a lot easier. How do we do that? Well, we provide benefits, business benefits for creators by subscription. Everything you might find at, say, an accelerator, but without the need to apply or get rejected maybe 9 out of 10 times. We're here to provide that in a democratized way, and you can sign up whenever you like and leave whenever you like. We're pretty confident of our value. Ellie's been a member for 4 years now, I would say, so we must be doing something right, and thanks again to Ellie for sticking with us for that long. There is a deal though, so if you aren't already a member and you do want to check that out, you can get your first month free with the code Think Dffrnt. You can just pop that in at the checkout on our website, test it out. Obviously it means there's no risk, you can cancel at any time, and I'll tell you what, even if you do end up paying in your second month and you still don't find any value out of it, I will personally refund you. That's my guarantee that you will enjoy it and see use from it. I won't tell you what you'll get because you'll find out all out on the website, and I'll end up boring you and eating into the time that we have to spend with Ellie tonight. But I will, before we kick off with that, thank all of our partners. These events are free, and they're kept free by both our members, so thank you members in the room, but also our partners who are in alphabetical order: Atomic Smash, Bello, DZ, FD Works, Freshworks for Startups, and Rocket Makers. As you'll see via the big screen behind me, we can provide you with one benefit of many others at Dffrnt, which is $10,000 worth of credits with Freshworks, which is probably worth the £12 in of itself per month. So check that out if you want to. We'll send a follow-up email which will include a link for information on that as well. Keep an eye on those afterwards. So yeah, let's get into it, shall we? Ellie, welcome. Thanks for spending your time with us this evening. Would love to just get a really brief intro from you before I ask you all the questions that I'm going to ask you and we just get into the conversation. So tell us who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Thanks, Ash. Well, firstly, this is cool. Thanks for having me on here. Really nice, so different. I like it. Different play on words there, but there you go. So my name's Ellie. For those of you who I haven't met or don't know me, I am the founder of Caleno. We are a tropical non-alcoholic spirits company, and we create distilled non-alcoholic spirits. So some of you may have heard of this little thing called the no and low category, which is a kind of really exciting, fast-growing, emerging sector of the drinks industry, which basically caters for people that want to drink less, abstain from alcohol, so be teetotal or actually cut it out altogether, or just drink a little less during the week and have a bit more of a balanced lifestyle. So we create non-alcoholic spirits that are super tasty. We've got 2 flavors. Both pair with either tonic, soda. You can make them in cocktails, bars stock them, supermarkets stock them. I've been doing this for just over 2 years now, and it has been one hell of a journey. And I'm really excited to be here today, speak to you all, chat to Ash, and hear some of your questions. Can't wait.
Amazing, thank you. 2 years, that's a lot of stuff you've done in that time. We'll dive into that in a second. You did allude to this platform being different, so I just want to pick up on that before I follow up on all of those things. Welcome to Roomkey, everyone, as well. I should have mentioned it at the start. For those of you who are here for the first time, Thanks for waiting on the download. And as you can probably tell, the platform's still fairly new, even though they've done an amazing job at such an early stage to build something remarkable. Most of the people waiting at this event are probably still sat in the avatar room designing their character, because I definitely spent about half an hour doing that the first time I joined. And it's always fascinating to see if people look like themselves or go in the complete opposite direction. I think Ellie and I, spoiler alert, have done the former, because I would say Ellie looks almost exactly like Ellie in real life, which is pretty wild. So thanks again for joining. And if you do want to run your own events, then check out Roomkey. It's fantastic. This isn't the only room they have. You have boardroom tables, meeting rooms. I think they still have a circular room, which feels a little bit like Dr. Evil's lair, which is pretty cool, and plenty of other ways that you can manage team events. So do check that out. They're powering our events here tonight. Ellie, you mentioned non-alcoholic spirit. That seems like a misnomer to me. Is that because there isn't a title for that in the world yet? Are you doing something so new? You know, dare I name drop competition here, the Seed Lips of the world, who may have got there first and have taken that market forwards for you to then go on and enter and hopefully, you know, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, do better at. But non-alc spirit, is that the right way to describe it? I'm always conscious of saying, you know, non-alcoholic gin. Is it a gin? Is it a cordial? What's the official title, and how is the market responding to that? Has it changed since you started 2 years ago?
Yeah, I guess two things to pick up on there, Ash. So one, in terms of the term non-alcoholic spirit, we call it a non-alcoholic spirit because our products are distilled in a very similar way to alcohol. However, we don't end up with an alcohol 40% ABV spirit at the end of the process. We focus on, and there's different ways you can do this, right? And there's different ways that different brands are doing this, but we focus on creating a really grown-up, sophisticated flavour for both our products using various botanicals and achieving the kind of right balance. And we do that through a kind of quite laborious 2-day distillation process. We then leave our liquids to mature for another 2 weeks. So the process is really similar. So I guess that word is in recognition of that. And then also, I guess on the flip side, when you're in quite a new category like this one, an emerging one, you need consumers to kind of understand what the drink is all about and almost create reference points for them in terms of how to mix it and how to serve it and when to drink it. And I think if we didn't have that label on it, it would be quite difficult for customers to navigate. So that, yeah, there's a few things there, I guess. And in terms of your question about has it changed much? Yes, it's changed enormously. I think when I first had the idea to create something, it was born out of a kind of quite personal need and just being in a situation where I needed a grown-up non-alcoholic drink, and Diet Coke and lime sodas weren't quite cutting it. But at the time, there wasn't much out there. Whereas now, fast forward, 4 years, more than 4 years, it's quite a populated landscape, and you've got lots of different non-alc beer brands, even non-alc ciders, wine alternatives, and loads. I think last count is like over 200 non-alcoholic spirits. So yeah, it has changed massively.
That's a huge number. I was having this conversation with someone the other day because, as you've alluded to there, it's changed and it's growing, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down. I'm doing some angel investing as part of a partnership with a VC fund called Ada Ventures, and just this last 2 weeks I've had 2 non-alcoholic drink spirit, I guess, companies approach me for investment, and it's not strictly my space, so I'll always kind of pass that on to someone who's possibly more relevant. But the reality is that the words around it are changing. And somebody had essentially said to me, it's really strange that we have a word for people that don't drink, right? Sober. And we also have a word for people that drink a lot, and that's called being an alcoholic. But we don't have a word for the default of drinking. And so I wonder if this plays into your origin story, and I'll get into that in a second. But, you know, when I'm out and if I'm not drinking, the question is often, why aren't you drinking? Not, you know, and that becomes a question. It's a really weird dynamic there, and I'm wondering if that's what you're seeing from your audience. Is that the audience you're appealing to, or are you appealing to an alcoholic audience who just wants an alternative?
Yeah, it's tricky because we're trying to do two things. We're trying to educate people in a category that is fairly nascent and fairly new, and then we're also trying to, I guess, explain it in a way which makes sense to people. And so that in itself is a challenge. We're talking to those kind of early adopters, people who are finding that they don't always want, just because they're not drinking alcohol doesn't mean they don't want to drink. So we're trying to, I think it's a cultural shift, right? And these things don't happen overnight. We've been used to associating the term drinking with meaning we're having, are you drinking tonight? Yes, I am, which normally means I'm drinking alcohol. And so I think over time we will shift that meaning to mean actually it's not about whether you're drinking alcohol, but what are you drinking? And it becomes about the brands, and regardless of whether it's alcoholic or non-alcoholic, it doesn't actually matter. And so, yeah, I think it started off with there being a stigma around non-alcoholic drinks, and people love to put labels on things. You're sober, you're alcohol-free, all of these kind of different types of labels, and we're trying to kind of move away from that and just actually talk about having a balance. And so when it comes to drinking, you may not be teetotal or an abstainer or whatever, but actually maybe you're just someone that likes to drink, and sometimes you have drinks with alcohol on Friday or Saturdays, and sometimes you drink alcohol free drinks on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays. And so I think like I said, these things don't happen overnight. So we're just kind of catering to those that want that balance. And so we find actually the majority of the people that buy from us do drink alcohol, but they just want to kind of supplement their lifestyle with alcohol-free drinks like Caleno, and it's a really interesting space actually. But yeah, I do think that as in the UK, we do love to put labels on things for some reason.
Yeah, and I guess as a customer, of course. Hopefully one of the very first customers, or at least one of the first tasters of the original Caleno, and I know it's kind of developed since, we'll get into that. The flavour kind of stands out above all else. It's not just an alternative for me. It's actually potentially superior, depending on your mood. It's delicious, frankly, and I'm not just saying that because you're here. I tell everybody that regardless. And it's it's almost, I've said to people as a tongue-in-cheek joke sometimes, it's actually slightly dangerous for me because I can down a drink of Caleno, which creates this habit of drinking a potentially gin-like drink quite rapidly. So when I do switch to actual alcoholic gin, maybe on a weekend, for example, and when the mood hits right, that muscle memory, I need to kind of adjust, otherwise it becomes dangerous for me to just down a gin and tonic. Yeah. So thank you for making such a delicious drink. So I want to start at the beginning, really. Like we've bounced around from the start already, but let's kind of get some chronology here and some narrative. For anyone that knows me knows I'm a bit of a nerd, and I'm into my superhero stories. And every good superhero story has a origin story, right? How this person came to be and how their purpose came into being. What's yours? What's your origin story? It's weird generally that someone just wakes up one day and says, hey, I want to start a really big drinks company. How the hell does someone make gin at their house and then get to the point where you're at? And we'll get to the growth story in a bit, but day one, where does the idea get sparked? What do you do first, and how do you start off?
Yeah, I guess it's important to kind of, make the point that I didn't really start off with going, I want to start a business, what do I do? It was, Caleno was kind of more born out of just a problem that I spotted and couldn't understand why no one was really doing much about it. And I think that probably is the same with a lot of founders who start out. They spot this problem, they actually they take the initiative, and then they do something about it if they feel strongly enough about it. And it was kind of the same with me. I found myself working for a drinks company where they mostly sold alcohol, and it kind of meant that Christmas parties were incredibly boozy. And so January rolled around, and this is 2017, and I decided to do something called Dry January for the first time, which some of you in the room may have done before. You take 30 days, a month, 31 days actually, off drinking alcohol, and it's a little bit of a challenge, and you can raise money. And so I decided to do this, and I found myself not wanting to be the person that just said no to everything in terms of going out and socialising with friends. I was like, no, you know what, I still want to go out and meet with my friends and not kind of change things too much. So I found myself out in a bar in Bristol. My friends were drinking alcohol. It was a weeknight. I'd driven, and so I get to the bar. I think I order a Diet Coke. I have that. Then I order another one. And then I'm kind of like, actually, I don't really want to drink Diet Cokes all night. So I end up with a water. And I don't know, I think just reflecting back on that experience, and it was the same throughout the month, going to supermarkets, not really having an option. I was really into my G&Ts, my spirits and mixers. And I just didn't feel like, I was like, why isn't there something that I can drink that feels like an alcohol equivalent? I get all that flavour from. It's not about drinking alcohol, it's about having that taste experience. Why can't I find that? That was kind of first and foremost the issue. And so this kind of prompted me, I guess, to start looking into the market and seeing what was out there. I did come across Seedlip, so I was like, okay, someone's done it. It seems quite niche, but it's working. There was Beck's Blue, there was Heineken, some of the beer companies were creating alcohol-free products, but it was still really early stages in the market. And so I think this gave me the confidence that it was possible to create non-alcoholic equivalents of what I wanted to be drinking. But yeah, my God, it was a bit of a journey to having that idea to actually then creating something that was fit for market and going out and launching with it. I still worked in my job for a while, and I was kind of doing this kind of all in the background, and it was like my kind of pet project and my little side hustle for a while. And then eventually I had that confidence to go out and do it. But that's basically how it all started, really, just from this kind of frustration around there not being better options and feeling like there should be.
So I'm picturing you in the kitchen, like mixing stuff, but maybe I'm naive here. I'm a really visual person. I like to picture these stories. What does that look like? Have you got, bottles all over the kitchen side? Are you bottling stuff yourself? At what point does it become, the bottle that we saw? And again, I'll get to that part of the story in a second. But yeah, like, how does someone start making not only a drink at home and brewing something, but making a non-alc drink at home? I literally wouldn't know where to start. I'd get some water, throw some fruit in it, and assume that maybe I've made something. But I know that it's definitely more complicated than that. Was it a couple of YouTube videos? And obviously you already had your industry contacts, so did that come in handy?
Yeah, I mean, totally that. I think my boyfriend used to just get annoyed with how many bottles there were lying around the house of things and making samples. But totally that. I went online and I ordered a load of different botanicals. I started experimenting. I was fortunate that I knew already about the distillation process in terms of what ingredients would normally get used. I'd done a course with work on the distillation of spirits and the different ways to do that, and then also the different ingredients to use. So I bought a bunch that I really liked and kind of understood the balancing act. But when it came to actually creating that flavour and making sure that those flavours were pulling through correctly, yeah, it was a ton of experimenting, basically soaking these botanicals in water, heating them up, seeing what the flavour ended up like at the end of that, trying different distillation methods, and it was a lot of trial and error. I did end up kind of then finding someone who could help me, who understood more about creating drinks, and so spoke to that person and then worked quite closely with them for the next couple of years to actually get to the right distillate and then blend these together to create the perfect balance. And the drink, for me, it was really clear, if I was going to create a product, it had to stand up and it had to be a quality product. Like, I wouldn't be happy if I poured, because it doesn't taste like a spirit. It doesn't have that burn of alcohol. We're not trying to replicate that. We're trying to replicate the flavour that you get when you drink a spirit like a gin or rum that is mixed with either a soda water or a premium tonic, we're trying to make sure that you get those flavours coming through. We're not trying to kind of replicate the effect of alcohol. But it was important to me that was there and that quality was there. So probably why it took so long, because I just was adamant I wouldn't launch it until I felt happy with it. But it was a lot of trial and error to begin with, Ash, to be honest.
It sounds like the classic startup story, right? Try a few things, figure it out, and then just keep going until something sticks. There's been a whole kind of journey since then, so it would be good to get quite a matter of fact overview as to where you're at right now, and then kind of, if you could give us. I'll ask you questions about how you got there in a second, but yeah, where's Caleno now? Give us an update on today. It's not just the kitchen table anymore, is it? It's quite a lot different.
No, at the moment we've got two products out there. Well, actually three. Sorry, we've just launched a third. We've got Light and Zesty, which is our kind of first iteration. It's a light and zesty blend of tropical citrus and spice botanicals. We've also then got Dark and Spicy, which is a kind of darker golden spicy blend packed with kind of darker pineapple tropical notes, ginger and lime. So we've got these two, and we've also just launched our cans. It's quite mixed in terms of the availability. So we're available in around just over 500 Sainsbury's stores. You can buy us on Amazon, available on our website, and we're working with lots of different restaurant operators like Revolution de Cuba. We've just launched in lounges who have 140 sites across the UK, and working with some really premium groups in London like D&D, who have Yive Garden, Madison, some really, really nice sites. So yeah, really, really exciting kind of situation at the moment, and we're just trying to grow. We're trying to grow the brand in the UK. It's all growing quite quickly, and then equally trying to kind of look at international and what the possibilities are there.
So that's quite the leap, right? That goes kitchen table, a couple of bottles, the boyfriend sat there going, God, like, the kitchen's a mess. What are you really building here, Ellie? All the way through to, being able to walk into virtually any Sainsbury's in the country, see your product on the shelves alongside some of the, biggest name brands that we could all just reel off of the top of our heads, and be able to buy it there. That's, pretty incredible growth in the space of 2 years. One of the things that I find often at events like these is that jump just happens, and we take it for granted, and we move on to figure out what the vision is and what else happens from here. But I'm curious, if we can break down how you got there, because there are going to be other people in the room that are building products that might not be exactly the same, but may need to go on a similar journey or want to go on a similar journey. What got you from the kitchen table to 500 stores and all of those hospitality units around the UK and internationally? How did that happen?
It's a good question. I'm trying to think of the quote. I think it's something like when preparation meets opportunity. It was that. I think it was just this realization that the non-alcoholic drinks sector was not up to par and was not meeting people's expectations, needs or wants, and wanting to do something about it. And then, people talk about timing. It is important. If I'd come out with this product 10 years ago, would it have landed in the same way? I don't know. And I think timing's important. And then opportunity. Worked hard to kind of get the first 1,000 bottles ready for the launch in dry January 2019, and it was just great timing. I'd gone along to the Mindful Drinking Festival, which is a alcohol-free event, and at this point it was just a few of us, early non-alcoholic drinks producers in London in a Spitalfields market, and I turned up with I think around 25 bottles that I'd hand-filled at home, because I was making the product at home at that point, kind of bottling and labelling and doing all of that at home. It was a small batch, so it was manageable. And I remember one guy kind of came up to me and said, "Oh, hiya, I'm from Sainsbury's. I'm really interested in this category, so I'm going around and trying them." And he'd really liked the product and said that he'd be in touch on Monday. And I guess I was highly skeptical. I was like, I don't think this really happens. Like, do retailers really kind of come up to you? And anyway, he did what he said. He followed up with me on Monday and wanted to have a meeting. So we caught up, and then didn't all happen from there. But a couple of months later, he messaged me and said, look, there's an opportunity coming up. Sainsbury's are looking to put more focus on their non-alcoholic range. They see this as a really big trend that they want to kind of get into and create a really amazing range, and they'd love you to pitch for it. So I sent a couple of bottles to the buyer and obviously pitched for the listing and got it. And they turned around and said, right, well, we want you to be in 500 of our stores for March, which was literally 3 months, I think, after I was launching the product. So that was a bit scary because it was just me in the business at the time. But it was one of those moments where it's like, either I just go for it and I figure out a way to make it happen. These opportunities don't always kind of come around. So it felt like I needed to kind of grab it and just go for it.
That's amazing. Yeah, from that from where you were to where you were needing to be in 3 months is scary, and I guess it's a real illustration of the startup life of throwing yourself in at the deep end and figuring things out along the way. What's the analogy? Entrepreneurs are people that jump out of planes and build the parachute on the way down. It's kind of that approach, really. Have you, a lot of people will be thinking about investment. Has that happened? And if so, has that kind of got you further along the journey? Just curious about what that landscape looks like for you. Did you put a lot of money in at the start? I don't want to be too personal here, but also at the same time, would love to get some transparency on that too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, to start off with, I guess I needed to prove the concept. So I put some of my own money into it. And by prove the concept, I mean get to a product that looks acceptable in terms of, I say acceptable, but, proof of concept, like a brand, a liquid that I could then go out and test with, which is exactly what I did. So I put my own money into it. I applied for a bursary, which I then got. So that kind of injected a bit of money. And then I would go out to, I think all in all, I visited like 150 different bars and restaurants, and literally went out and spoke to people, because I needed to make sure this was something that people would buy, and it was important that I got the feedback from people that worked with drinks day in, day out, spoke to consumers, and then a lot of them were kind enough to let me come in and sample the product with their consumers. So I think that initial bit of injection of cash got me to that proof of concept, which then allowed me to then pitch to investors about 3-4 months before launching. When you pitch to investors, either you've got a product that you've proven works and you've been out in the market, maybe you've been out in the market for 6-12 months and it's doing really well, and therefore you go and pitch for more money. Or in my case, I hadn't launched yet. It was about a concept, and this is what I'm looking to do, and this is the vision, and I've got a brand and a liquid, and these are the things I'm going to do with the money to improve it. And also, to be honest, I wouldn't have been able to, if I didn't go and pitch for investment, I wouldn't have been able to produce the bottles I needed for Sainsbury's. So that was obviously part of it. Like, there's this listing on the table that is going to kind of parachute the business and propel the business into nationwide visibility, which is I guess from investors really kind of compelling. So yeah, that definitely kickstarted the business, and I didn't realise it at the time, but food and drink are the most competitive categories out there when it comes to not just from investment perspective, but also just from a category perspective. There's so much innovation in food and drink. So yeah, it was an exciting place to be, but also kind of fairly daunting because it was the first time I'd done any of that stuff. So I was definitely thinking on my feet and learning along the way.
So I just wanted to dive a little bit deeper in on that, really. The investment conversations. How did those happen? Because I know now, because I've been in the industry for 5-10 years, and so it's an easy thing that I often take for granted now. It's just like, cool, of course you would do that route, and that route. But for you starting out, there was a learning curve, I'm sure. I mean, obviously you'll have seen how companies raise money in the industry because you worked in it, but obviously probably a different kettle of fish as a founder. How did you approach that kind of conversation, and who did you reach out to? Were there events you went to do pitch competitions, or was it more of a private thing? Was it industry based? Is it individuals that, you know, might just like a tipple every now and again? Or curious as to how you approach that for anybody else in the room that might be looking at investment at some point in the future.
Yeah, I think I was completely new to investment as a word and understanding it. So I think it's important to kind of educate yourself and read up on the different types of investment, because if you just go full throttle into it, you know, you can end up in a situation where the investor's getting a really good deal and you're not getting such a good deal. So I think it is important that you do your research. I mean, that being said, I was still quite naive and new to it all. So there are definitely, what I found is, and I took advantage of these at the start, but companies that offer either free training or workshops, you know, great organisations like Dffrnt, which kind of propel you on your way, give you the tools to do that. And there's, if you really look for it, there's money out there that you can help to kickstart your business without needing to go to that investment level straight away. And, you know, if you need to prove that concept, and that's definitely what I found. You know, I mentioned taking advantage of this bursary. Of course, I had to work hard on the pitch and get that money, and it was competitive against other brands. But I feel like there's quite a lot of that out there before you necessarily jump to investment, and definitely before you do jump to investment, think about the different routes. I mean, there's crowdfunding, there's angel investment, there's lots of different types that even, you know, I'm still a little bit fuzzy on. So I'm by all means no expert, but now I see other companies doing different things. So I think it's just it's useful to understand the different types of investment and where you are as a business, what you want out of the business, and what support you want. You know, do you just want money and actually you want the investors to kind of take a back seat, or do you want smart capital? Do you want support along the way? Do you want them to know kind of about your industry? I think those things are really worth thinking about, and things that I considered and kind of actively read up on when it came to investment.
No, that's really good advice. You're right. There's no one size fits all, and I think a lot of the time it's kind of miseducated to the wider startup population that, you know, the funding route is the right route or the only route, and it's really not. It's about making sure, of course, you know, you get the right things at the right time for your company, and that's aligned with your end goal. You know, sometimes people are wanting to exit by a certain age because they want to have an early retirement, and that's absolutely fine. And sometimes people want to build a business that's going to see them, you know, not be bored in their retirement, which I know will probably happen to me if I end up getting out too early. So, you know, and that's okay too, and that can be done with or without investment. It just depends on, you know, who you are and what your wants and needs are. So it's good to hear that you've kind of taken different tacts and essentially just kind of asked the questions, and like you said, surrounded yourself with the right people, which of course, appreciate the plug, is one of the things that Dffrnt is able to do for people. You've mentioned brand a lot tonight, and this is something that's kind of a specialist subject for me. I love talking about brand. My background's in branding, so I am biased when it comes to this. But for anybody who hasn't checked out the Caleno brand, the Caleno drink or the Caleno brand yet, I urge you to go and at least jump on the website to have a look, because, you know, for want of a better word, it's beautiful, right? It looks amazing on the shelf, looks amazing in my living room and on the kitchen side, and not only, of course, does it taste amazing, but it's something that's really exciting to see. You don't have to spend too long on your website to see the word joy written across everything that you've kind of incorporated. My mum loves that. Her name's Joy, so she just feels like the drink is all about her, and so I'll obviously just continue buying that for her. But, you know, I'm curious, in a world where there are some really average and or rubbish beers out there, for example, but the cans and the bottles are getting more and more intricate with more and more crazy and beautiful designs. How much does brand play a part in your journey? You know, the liquid's great now. It actually does taste good versus tastes amazing versus other products. But is brand, you know, 90% of the journey? Is it 10? How do you see it? How do you view it? And what work do you put into that to make it powerful for you?
Yeah, I think like you, Ash, like I'm also slightly biased towards brands. So it was something that, naturally within the process gave me a lot of energy. And I guess what I didn't mention earlier on is actually post having this idea, 3-4 months later, I flew out to Colombia, which is a place really close to my heart. My mum is from there, she grew up there and used to take me and my sisters out there when we were younger, and I got this opportunity to actually go back there as an adult and travel around the country. And I guess it's safe to say that trip served as a lot of inspiration, I guess, for the brand. Eventually, coming back, I was really thinking about what I wanted this brand to be about, and I'd just come back from an amazing trip where I'd met these wonderful people. South Americans have this kind of lust and energy for life. I'd visited some super colourful towns and cities. Everything was just so vibrant and joyful. And it kind of struck me that the alcohol-free space, as I saw it, just didn't resonate with me. It felt like it was a bit serious. It was a bit kind of, I don't know, not really connecting with the consumer. People were not really enjoying it. It didn't feel like a joyful category. And I wanted to inject a bit of joy into there and actually make it, I hate the word cool, but make it fun, make it, something that people aspire to rather than see as a stigma. And so I would say that I guess my beliefs on things and that trip, and even down to the ingredients now, in terms of we use quite tropical ingredients in the distillation, things like pineapple, papaya, exotic inca berries. I just think that's a really interesting point of difference, and it links back to when I was in Colombia and visiting different fruit markets. So yeah, for me that's really important, and I think it tells people why the brand is as it is, and for us, I guess as the brand has developed, I've become really clear on that mission. And actually, Caleno is a brand where we believe in joyful well-being. Like, too many times people tend to take joy out of things like going on the treadmill, dieting to the extreme. You kind of take the joy out of it, but actually it's that message of, if you drink a Caleno, you can still have that moment of enjoyment without the downsides or the side effects of drinking alcohol. And I think that's the message we're trying to promote, especially particularly after the year we've all had. We've all been stuck inside for the last 12 months, and we just focus on those kind of 3 pillars of wellness and look at how we show up in different ways, whether it's movement and exercise, eating and socializing, which is a big part of our drinks, and that kind of relaxation and unwinding. So that's where we're really focused on. I think just making well-being more joyful for people. And I don't know, I think it's just been there from the start, and I think it's quite powerful, and it's definitely the vibrancy and the colour is what we use to kind of differentiate ourselves from the market, which hopefully is helping us to stand out.
I love that, and the journey and the story that comes from the origin of the word Caleno, and obviously the way that you serve it with the Inca berry, it just really adds to the story. And yeah, I guess with my investor hat on, it feels like a really key part of why I would pick it up off the shelf. I'm not just buying a wine because it tastes good now. I'm buying a wine because the bottle is beautiful and the story behind it is really interesting. Ben from Novel Wines, he's one of our members and has been for a long time, and he'll tell stories about the wines that he sells, and to a certain poignancy that I can now pass on those stories to my friends when they're drinking the wines. And so it becomes part of an experience, I think, and that's seemingly more and more important for the consumer nowadays. And so not only am I just buying Caleno off the shelf because it tastes amazing, I'm buying it because I know I'm supporting a small company, but I'm also getting involved in that energy and that brand that you and your now growing team are bringing to the table. I'm going to open up to questions soon. So for those of you who have joined whilst we've been talking, you can see the emotes on your screen, on your phone or desktop. There's one that says raise hand. So not just yet, but at the end when we come to questions, make sure you tap that ask any questions. I'll pass you the public mic. Hopefully this works. It shouldn't be too fiddly, but I'll pass you the mic. You should be able to accept it. Ask the question. Everyone should be able to hear you, including Ellie and I. Otherwise, your audio is just kind of kept to your tables for now. So yeah, be ready for that when we come to it in a second. But Ellie, before we move on to questions from the room, 2 more questions really. The first one is, what's next? You're looking to take this international. You've just launched your third, product of the brand. Does it stop at 3? Are there going to be 10, 30? What's the vision here? Is Caleno going to be the next Coca-Cola, or is it going to sell to Coca-Cola? And how do you expect to take that, forward from year 2 to year 5, etc.?
So on the range front, it's definitely quality, not quantity. And I guess we just want to make sure, with the recent launch of our cans, so you get the light and zesty with tonic experience in a kind of ready to drink, easy to pick up format. It's just making sure that we're available in as many occasions as possible. We know that a kind of premium glass bottle is great for the home and behind the bar, but for those moments when you're out and about and on the go, in the park at the moment, if we can't get a booking at the pub, then it's great for that. But I think in terms of what's next, we've still got a way to go in the UK, more retailers, growing our online presence, growing our presence in bars and restaurants. We're just scratching the surface there, honestly. There's so much opportunity. So the plan is to really ramp up brand awareness and trial in the UK. So we've got kind of really big sampling target for us this year as a kind of, 2.5, well, we're not even 2.5 years, but yeah, around that age. We just need to get product into people's hands, because we know once they try it, they're really bought in. So that's a big focus for us. And then beyond that, it's definitely looking towards international growth and growing into other markets. There's loads of innovation in the UK in terms of different brands, but in other markets, there's the demand, not as many brands. So we're really interested in what the opportunities are there, because they are huge. So that's something I'm quite excited about.
So huge opportunities. That's exciting, but in probably depending on the day, also quite scary, I'd imagine. Of course, these events are called Think Dffrnt, and there's a bunch of reasons for that, not only because it sounds great, given the brand name drop in there, but also because I'm fascinated about the mindset and not in a woo kind of whimsical way, but in a scientific kind of logical way, the psychology of founders, what makes somebody tick slightly differently to the quote-unquote average person who may not be crazy enough to start and run a business of their own. What do you think is potentially different about the way you view the world that means that you've gone on this journey? And what's been the biggest stressor for you? What is there anything that gets to you, and do you have ways of kind of managing that? You're growing your team, that can be tough for people, and sometimes there's conversations about, hey, do I deserve to be as big as I'm going to be? Just curious how your brain works, and if you would attribute anything that you've learned in the past to getting to where you are and where you're about to go.
Yeah, it's a good question, Ash, actually. So view of the world, and I guess what makes me tick as a founder and kind of push on, I think I guess what people have called me, tenacious, just when I get something in my head. And I don't know, I couldn't let it go. It was like, why are the drinks options, excuse my language, so shit? What is going on? It just felt like one of those things where no one had really done anything about it, and it just felt like it had fallen on me to do something. And also it was an industry that I loved. It was something that I felt I did feel, and I still feel very passionate about, that can make a difference. Ultimately, my brand and other brands in this category are helping people to drink a little bit less alcohol. And it's not to say alcohol is bad, but I think, in moderation. So that's a really great thing. And I talk to a lot of customers, and when they tell me, actually, I'm now drinking your drink and I've cut down massively on alcohol and I feel so much better, I'm sleeping better, I'm more alert during the day. That's really positive, and I think that's what keeps me going. I think actually realizing that I've created a product that people need and want. In terms of the stresses, oh god, loads of things. It really annoys me when people tell me that we can't do something. I always say, where there's a will, there's a way. I just don't see the world as we can't do things. I just see it as we'll find a way to figure it out. It's almost, for me, it's like a light bulb. It's a challenge. So maybe other people don't see it like that. And don't get me wrong, you need both. When you bring people into the business, you do need those people that are going to be like, hang on a minute, we can't just go full steam ahead. Have we thought about this, and this? And I get that, but at the same time, I think you need that driving force kind of propelling you forward. If that answer makes any sense.
No, 100%, it really does. And actually, I never like to lead the questions. It's all about getting your pure insight here. But yeah, I agree. I see that a lot of the time, over the years that I've run Dffrnt and in its previous guise as Yenna, seeing the difference between founders that succeed and founders that fail. There's a whole bunch of things, and a large part of it is luck and timing that you can't really control. But one of the things that seems to be a consistent is, of course, they don't give up, because if you give up by default, you've not necessarily failed, but you've stopped, and therefore limited your chance of success. But the thing that always fascinates me is the level of confidence, almost to the point of delusion, of a founder in believing that their vision of the world is going to be because the moment you falter on that is the moment you leave opportunity for doubt, and the moment you doubt is the moment other people can see that doubt and may not follow on in the journey. And we've seen that countless times with huge named founders in big dramatic failures. Theranos is a great example. The documentary is on Netflix very soon about that story, but I urge people to go and read Bad Blood if they haven't already, about a founder that essentially just had no technology but had all of the delusion to get to the point of a multi-billion-dollar valuation company. Says a lot about due diligence from investors, frankly, but also just getting people to believe that this is the future that exists for the world, and having them come along the journey. WeWork, another example. You get to that point by saying and delivering time and time again on a vision of the future, and yours is, of course, that Caleno, and bringing joy to people through the liquid they're drinking in a non-alcoholic way is going to be on their tables and in their houses, in an accessible way, and en masse. So yeah, it's unsurprising that you've got to this point, given that tenacity and thinking back to that day when we sat outside of Hearts Cafe drinking shot glasses of obviously the non-alcoholic spirit, and having dodgy looks from people thinking we were doing shots at about 12 p.m. in the afternoon. Thinking back to then and seeing how far it's come in just 2 years is remarkable, and I have zero doubt that it will do that Caleno will go on to do incredible things. First of all, a huge thank you for joining us tonight. I'm going to get everybody to join in a virtual round of applause. If you're on desktop, you can press 2 or click the clap button. But thank you so much, Ellie.
Oh, thanks, Ash. Thanks for all the brilliant questions. Really enjoyed answering them. And yeah, thanks for having me on. It's always good to have a chat with you.
No worries at all. So I am going to open to questions, and someone's got ahead of the game here already. I think it was Dan with the yellow shirt and afro, and then we'll come to Tom just after. So Dan, I'm coming to you. I'm going to pass you the public mic. We tried this last time, didn't work super well, but I think you have to just look out for a notification on your device. So give me a sec. I'm going to pass that to you, and hopefully you can ask your question.
Excellent. Hello.
Hey, it's working. Great. Yeah, what's your question, Dan?
Great chat. Yeah, it's nice to be here. And this is very strange. But if I was launching a product in Sainsbury's tomorrow, what should I do? I want it to sell a lot. I want to make sure that Sainsbury's keeps selling my products. What do I do to sort of I get my product stocked in Sainsbury's tomorrow? What's your advice?
Ooh, big question. I'd probably caveat with it with there's not a one size fits all answer. There's not a kind of catch all answer. I think it's multiple things. I think it's understanding their objectives. Why have they listed you? What do they want you to deliver? So you're clear on your goals and what you need to be hitting. Then it's understanding the customer and how you're gonna reach them, because it's not just getting the product into store and then great, it's going to sell itself. You've got to support that listing with your own marketing and marketing in store to make sure that the discoverability of the product is there. And I think it's just making sure that there's a good relationship there with the buyer, that they're understanding your needs and wants, and you understand their needs and wants, and having that kind of regular contact if you can, and just understanding your place within the category. Like, how big is the category? What's the opportunity? What are the other kind of key players in there? How are you different? Because it's not I think people sometimes think they get a listing and right, that's it, job done, hard work over. But the buyer's going to be on your back if you're not delivering sales, then you're going to be out the door. So it is a constant kind of, I guess, piece of work, really. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I've just revoked the mic access for Dan, so I'm going to assume it does. If you have another question at all at any point, Dan, just pop the raise hand up. But a great answer, Ellie, regardless. So that worked well. Moving on to the next question, I think was with Tom. So I'm going to pass you the mic, Tom. Let's keep up the consistency, see if we can get this one working. Give me a second.
Pressure, guys.
Thanks, Ash. Hopefully you can hear me.
Here we go.
Thanks, Ellie. Long-time fan of your drink. Couple of questions. One really is around the kind of alternative substances to alcohol. I know people like 3Spirit, for example, put things like Damiana and other alcohol alternatives into their drinks. Is that a trend that you think will increase, and do you think that Caleno will be adopting some of those practices? And second question would be, is there kind of entry into this market or anticipated entry into this market from some of the bigger players? Do you have big spirit companies looking at launching and kind of moving aggressively into your space?
Brilliant. Thanks for the question. So to answer your first question, and also thank you for being a long-time fan, massively appreciate that. So to answer your first question, which is I think around functional, drinks with functional benefits. Obviously you mentioned 3Spirit, and then you've also got kind of CBD drinks. It's a really interesting space, and I think this category will be built on brands and products that all do quite different things and deliver on different things. From my perspective, you've got some products and brands that are who are trying to replicate exactly that taste and even up to the burn of alcohol, and just be like, we're not a rum, or we're an alternative to a gin or a rum, and be very, very direct in that sense, and almost be like the diet version of full fat alcohol. And then at the other end of, we kind of are in the middle where we're our own thing. We're not following necessarily any kind of rules around flavors. We're just creating great drinks that we love and that we hope other people will love. And then you've got the kind of functional element of brands that are creating drinks that have functional benefits and make you potentially feel in a certain way. I think people in the market like different things. It comes down to taste and preferences, and never say never, and we might kind of dabble and experiment, but right now we're kind of focused on that, bringing that flavour to the drink. So that's kind of my view, and I'll stand on it. And then in terms of players coming into the market, you're getting some big entries into the no and low market right now. So Gordon's, for example, just launched their alcohol-free variant this year, as well as Tanqueray. So Gordon's being the #1 largest gin brand in the UK, and beyond that globally. So huge entry to the market. I see it as a positive thing, because actually there's lots of smaller brands in the market, and actually sometimes you need that big player presence in order to kind of draw attention and buyers and consumers to the market. So at the moment, non-alcoholic spirits account for a really small proportion of the wider spirits category, but that's growing in triple digits at the moment. So in order for that share of the pie, as it were, to be bigger, I think we need bigger entrants to come in and put their massive budgets that we don't have behind it to grow the category. So yeah, I think it needs a balance. You're always going to have your kind of craft products and your smaller brands, and then your bigger brands. But I think it's all good for the category. Hopefully,
I love that question, and I love the answers as well. Just to add on to that, from a consumer point of view, I guess. It's weird going into a shop and seeing, my what is it called, Beck's Blue, I think. It's the like you said, the diet version it's pitched as. And so I think the opportunity here for brands like Caleno is just to enter the market and make their own kind of category, just like Seedlip obviously started with, and whilst Gordon's and the likes are going, here's the 0% version of what we offer already. As a consumer, I'd be looking, I'm not just saying this because you're on stage, but as a consumer, I'd be looking at the version of the drink that you're selling, which is the adult, non-alc version, non-alc drink that I can drink, or the adult cordial, I guess, that I would want to drink. And I guess the only company that I could see that was previously taking out that space was the likes of Schlur in the UK, right, which is just more of a juice, I would say now. It's like what you give the kids if they want wine, and actually Caleno can easily be that option. So yeah, there's so much opportunity there from a consumer point of view, and yeah, love the fact that you're carving out your own space. Any other questions at all before we get to the networking? Just raise your hand using the question emote, and I'll offer the mic to you. Carisha's got it, so give me a second. Okay, Carisha, you should be able to ask that question now if it's working. Hopefully. If not, feel free just to pop the question in the chat. If you're having any questions, you should see that at the bottom of your screen. You could type it there, and we'll answer that question if you can get it in there quite quickly. But yeah, other than that, we will start to wrap up and move to the networking part of the evening. The event officially ends at 6:30, so hopefully, Ellie, you're able to stick around for the next kind of 22 minutes to be exact, before I'm sure a bunch of us have to go and make some dinner and maybe even relax on the balcony with a drink, with a glass of Caleno, perhaps. I know I will be doing, but yeah, any other remaining questions before we get to that?
Okay, I've just seen a
question in the chat there from Kat. Yeah, go for it.
So, hi Ellie. I was wondering whether you're about to focus more on online sales or providing through big retailers like Sainsbury's. Good question. So, I mean, with COVID, like that mix definitely changed, because we're actually quite a multi-channel brand, I would say. We don't just limit our availability to one channel, say retailers. And that's, that plays into one of our pillars, which for me is accessibility. I wanted to make sure this product was accessible in the bars and restaurants, in the retailers, and online, whichever way people wanted to purchase it. So that is kind of reflected in our strategy. But when obviously COVID happened 12 months ago and the bars shut down, that channel was basically essentially closed to us. So it meant that more people were heading to online to purchase products that, drinks they wouldn't traditionally purchase online, although we did have a website. We've seen that grow massively, and actually there's a real opportunity there to understand the customer, have a more direct relationship with them than we would do through retailers and other channels. So I'm really loving that channel at the moment. I think it's great, and we'll kind of continue to grow it. So yeah, very, very multi-channel approach, really.
Great answer. Thanks for the question as well, Kat. Okay, so I think Carisha has a question. I'm just going to read it, and then I think you've got it as well. You can read that, right, Ellie? We'll do Carisha's question, and then we'll get to the networking part.
Hey Carisha, glad you got your question in. So yes, you got to briefly speak during the member board meetings. So your question is, did you also develop the gate to aid in becoming a better mixer to alcoholic beverages also? Did you develop, am I understanding that correctly, Ash? The question is, did you develop the gate to aid in becoming a better mixer to alcoholic beverages also? Okay, so I think...
I guess it means kind of the skill in doing it. So obviously you were selling it as a marketer before, but any mixology classes, I guess, is that like do you learn that on YouTube? How do you get into that?
Yeah, I mean, you just learn as you go, and I think experimentation is key, trying things out. I think in terms of that mixing and making cocktails, a lot of people find that quite daunting, and we know that a lot of our customers like to make quite simple cocktails to be catered for that. But equally, in the bar world, it's quite fun to come up with different cocktails and play around with those different flavors, and it's almost like an art form, really. You can have quite a lot of fun with it, and I think the key is just not worrying too much if it turns out like if it doesn't work, you can just keep trying and try again. And so that was my approach to.
And can you mix it with, because I think the other part of that question there is like, if I'm understanding it correctly, Carisha, is like, can you mix it with alcohol? Like, does it defeat the point if you do, or does it potentially add, if there's maybe a vodka in there and then I'm adding Caleno as part of a cocktail mix and then topping up with, tonic. Not that this is like a live drinks class or anything, but who knows, maybe it could be.
Yeah, you know what you can do? We don't, because obviously we're a non-alcoholic product, we don't like go down that route, but I know that bartenders definitely create low cocktail versions with Caleno and maybe using another alcoholic spirit. So the floor is there to kind of do with it whatever you want. My boyfriend actually says he drinks Caleno and then he'll use a bit of gin, and he really likes the flavour. So I think it's whatever you want. It does work. It's not kind of exclusively just a non-alcoholic drink. You can turn it into a low or an alcoholic one.
Perfect. So I'm going to wrap up the questions there. Really great answers, really great questions from the audience. Thank you everyone for asking those and for sticking around until almost the end. Angela has a question for you, Ellie, too. So I'm going to let you potentially answer that on the table. Angela's on the green table over there on your left. So if you are willing to stick around and able to head over there, then please do so. And anybody that has other questions can join that table and ask you. Please don't hog the seats. If anybody else has questions for Ellie, I'm sure she'll be able to answer those in time. But that leads me to my final question for you, Ellie, which is, if we want to buy Caleno, sounds like we can buy it in a lot of places, and if we want to contact you potentially online, but curious where we can find you.
Yeah, so best place for kind of brand information is probably just calenodrinks.com. So head onto there if you want cocktail inspiration to understand a bit more about the story and the brand. But like I said earlier, we're also available on Amazon, and Sainsbury's are kind of the kind of two key other main places to get us. But thanks everyone for your questions. Really appreciated it. And Ash for having me. Been brilliant.
Thank you for joining us, and anyone that wants to chat a bit more to Ellie outside of the event, she's also, of course, in the Dffrnt community, which you'll find more information about on Dffrnt.so. As I mentioned at the start, you can get a free month if you want to check it out and find out what benefits that we have for you using the code Think Dffrnt at the checkout. Just have a look at that, and any questions, just send them my way. But thanks everybody for joining tonight. These events happen bi-weekly, so every 2 weeks we are live on Roomkey with another founder asking questions. I'm just lining up the next one right now, doing almost 12, what is it going to be, 100 events a year. 26 events a year, bad maths, I'm better at speaking, is going to be a tough and fun one. But yeah, any founders or stories that you would like to hear told, just send us a little request, tweet us at We Are Different, and we'll line them up for you. But yeah, without further ado, I'll let you all start talking to each other. Just push T to talk if you're on browser. You can use your phone, and any questions, pop them in the chat and I'll answer them for you. But thanks again for joining, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.